exercise 9 is no different from the other exercises we've been doing in the technique that we're going to use to solve exercise 9. So for exercise 9, we got negative 1 and 2/10 times b, and notice how there's a negative number attached to the variable. That's my sign that I'm probably, when I divide by that number, going to need to flip the sign. That's just something that I always see people miss, so I want to give you as many reminders as I can about it. Is subtract 5 and 3/10 is greater than or equal to 1 and 9/10. Now, just like all these other problems, I recommend that you do your addition subtraction first and then your multiplication division. So, and this is one of those examples where I was telling you, you don't have to do it in that order. You can divide both of these sides by negative 1 and 2/10 first, but then you're going to get some funky decimals. You'll still get to the same answer, but it's just not the easiest way, is in my opinion. So I've got to take care of this minus 5 and 3/10 first. So I'm going to go ahead and add 5 and 3/10 to both sides. Well, that's going to cancel these guys out. That's going to leave me with negative 1 and 2/10 times b is greater than or equal to 7 and 2/10. Make sure you put that decimal there, because if you leave it as the 72, you're going to get a weird answer. Now, after this, like I already mentioned earlier, we need to solve for b. And so you're going to take just one step now in order to solve out for b, and just make sure that you remember you're dividing by a negative number. So what does that do to the sign? And also, what does that do to this positive number? What is it going to change it to? I'll go ahead and let you figure that one out on your own, but I do want to take some time to go over number 10 with you. So for exercise 10, we're also being asked to solve the inequality. And on this one, we have it set up kind of like exercise 7. Where we have the number and then the operation. Here we had 8 minus 4 and 4 thirds. And then here we have 2 and 9/10 minus 0 and 6/10. So it's set up in the same way. So we're going to go and solve it in that same kind of way also. We're going to have to take care of that 2 and 9/10 first before we take care of that 0 and 6/10 times r. So you got to ask yourself, is that 2 and 9/10, is it positive or negative? Well, it's a positive 2 and 9/10, and so if it's a positive 2 and 9/10, to turn it into a 0, I'm going to need to subtract that same number by itself. That's going to cancel these out and leave me with, now this isn't a minus sign anymore, this is now a negative sign, so it's now a negative 0 and 6/10 r, greater than or equal to sign, and then negative 1 and 3/10 minus 2 and 9/10. You can kind of think about these as they're both negative if we were to stack them on top of one another. So we're just going to add the numbers together and keep the answer negative. 9 plus 3 is 12. Bring the 1 up. 2 plus 1 is 3. Plus another 1 is 4. So that's 4 and 2/10. And then to get the r by itself, I still need to get rid of that negative 0 and 6/10 times r. Well, because that's multiplication, and any number over itself equals 1, I'm going to put that number over itself, which is to divide by that number. And when I divide by that number, I'm going to get the r by itself, just like I want. R is going to end up by itself, but because I divided by a negative number, we're going to need to flip the sign. And then you're going to need to figure out what negative 4 and 2/10 divided by negative 0 and 6/10 is going to equal. And then that will give you your solution. So we solved this one the same way we solved out our previous problem on number 7. Same kind of technique. Now we're just working with decimals. On exercise 11, which best describes the error in solving the inequality? Well, the original problem here is x divided by 3 plus 4 is less than 6. And it looks like they got rid of this 3 because I don't see it anywhere over here. And then that 6 turned into an 18. So they must have multiplied both sides by 3 first. And then now in the next step, you can see that the 4 has been removed. And so they must have subtracted by 4 because this went from 18 to 14. So it wants you to describe what did they do wrong, because they did something wrong here. So what did they do wrong? My recommendation for these problems is to solve it out yourself. So actually do this problem and list out the steps, in order so that you can compare your answer to their answer and why their answer is wrong, assuming that you did it correctly. I'll do a similar example. What if I had something like x divided by 5 plus 8 is less than 13. So if I had this problem, the way that I would solve it is I would start off with the number that's farthest from the variable. That's either going to be the 5 or the 8, not the 13. Remember, we have to work on the same side as the variable. And so I'm going to take care of this plus 8 first. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. That's going to leave me with x divided by 5 is less than 5. And then I've got x divided by 5, and I want to get rid of that 5 on the bottom, so I'm going to multiply one onto the top. These will cross simplify. If I multiply the left side by 5, I'm going to multiply the right side by 5, and that's going to leave me with x is less than 25. So that's how I would solve out the problem if for this example, which is similar to the one that they're asking about. Do that one yourself and then compare your steps to their steps, because you're going to need to get a different answer, because we're being told they did something wrong. What did they do wrong? And if you're a little confused on, well, I don't know how to list out the steps necessarily, take a look at the answers that are provided and see if one of those makes sense to you, if one of those really clicks. And then what they want you to do when they say correct the error is they want you to drag one of these little boxes, that whichever one you think is right, and move it into the boxes here so that the steps are correct. So it wants you to put the correct steps in there. So what you should be putting in those boxes is really the steps that you're doing to solve it out.